I'm going to be perfectly honest. Had Helena Bonham Carter not been in Fatal Deception, Mrs. Lee Harvey Oswald, I probably never would have watched this film, mainly because I don't believe I'd actually heard of this before I found out she was in it, and I'm not sure if I've heard of it since. I guess because I'm aware of it, it's hard to kind of judge whether or not I would have ever come across it. But I'm glad that she's in it, because it's really interesting. The film was released in 1993. It's directed by Robert Dornhelm and written by Steve Bello, and stars, of course, Helena Bonham Carter as Marina Oswald and Frank Whaley as Lee Harvey Oswald. And this, as I'm sure you can guess, is all about Mrs. Lee Harvey Oswald. It's all about the widow of Lee Harvey Oswald, who was accused of shooting Kennedy. And this is kind of her side of the story, what her life was like, her interactions with Lee Harvey Oswald. And I think that that's a really interesting interpretation, because obviously I would just assume that if there was a film about Lee Harvey Oswald, it would be from his perspective. But it's not. And I think that that's really interesting, and it looks at her life in Russia, what her life was like and her family's life was like after the assassination, and what her role in this was. Not that I'm saying she had anything to do with it, but it kind of looks at it from that angle. I don't know how factually accurate this is, because it's not my area of expertise at all. So, I don't know, maybe if you know a lot about this subject matter, then maybe you can, share some thoughts on that, and if you think it is accurate, or if it's taken a lot of creative liberties. It's got 5.8 out of 10 on IMDb across a very tiny 191 reviews, so it's not really enough reviews to judge whether or not it's critically successful. But from a viewing perspective, I think it's good. I think the narrative unfolds quite well. I think from a viewing perspective, it focuses on some really good aspects of her life, of Marina Oswald's life. But again, maybe there were some things in her life that should have been in this that weren't, and I'd love to know that if you are aware about her more. Obviously, HBC's performance is absolutely brilliant, and I love her in this. I think everybody's really well cast. The on-screen chemistry is great. In terms of being educational, yes, I learned a little bit about the assassination of Kennedy, but this is not a film that I would say is going to fill in all of the gaps about that event. But it's an interesting perspective. I like the film. It's got quite a dusty colour palette, which works kind of well because of the tone and the mood. Usually I don't like that kind of thing. But it's, it's pretty decent. I like it. Would I watch it again? Yes, because HBC is in it. But if Helena Bonham Carter wasn't in it, I think I'd have watched it just once and liked it, and never really gone back to it unless I were to be studying, this time in history, which I can't imagine I ever would. Maybe I will. So it's decent enough for me. If, as I said, you're particularly passionate about, presidents or anything, or Lee Harvey Oswald as a person, maybe you'll have a very different opinion. But for me, Fatal Deception was a pretty educational, interesting watch.